Earth did not scream when it went dark. It simply stopped existing to the rest of the galaxy. No warning burst preceded it. No automated distress call. One moment, Earth's usual noise flooded the interstellar networks: civilian chatter, trade beacons, scientific telemetry, cultural broadcasts in 1,000 languages. The next moment, there was nothing. Not static. Not interference. Absence. Across known space, systems flagged the anomaly within seconds. Human traffic vanished from every lane. Quantum entanglement relays reported clean severance, not decay. Long-range gravimetric sensors still confirmed Earth's mass and orbit, but its voice, its presence, was gone. To most young civilizations, this would have seemed like a technical failure. To the old ones, it felt like a death sentence. Emergency councils convened on worlds that had not held them in centuries. Military AIs awakened from archival sleep. Borders slammed shut. Ancient treaties, long considered ceremonial, were suddenly enforced with shaking urgency. No one asked what had happened to Earth. They asked what they had done to deserve this. Because the galaxy remembered. Humanity had never been the loudest species, nor the most numerous. They were not the oldest, nor the most technologically extravagant. What set them apart was something far more unsettling. When humans prepared for war, they removed themselves from the conversation entirely. There were records, sealed, fragmented, and deliberately vague, of another time Earth had gone dark. Those archives ended shortly afterward, not because historians stopped writing, but because there had been no one left to write about. A senior archivist from the Velothi Concordance stared at the confirmation feed and felt something dangerously close to fear. "They've done it," she whispered, though no one had asked the question aloud. Across the galaxy, similar realizations spread in silence. Merchant guilds cancelled contracts without explanation. Pilgrimage fleets reversed course mid-jump. Entire civilizations began evacuating border systems closest to human space, not towards safety, but toward obscurity. Being unnoticed suddenly felt like the only remaining defense. No hostile fleet had been detected near Earth. No stellar weapon discharge. No gravitational scars. This was not an attack. That distinction made it worse. Humanity did not go dark when it was losing. Humanity went dark when it had finished deciding. The logic was terrifyingly simple. Humans argued fiercely among themselves. They debated ethics, consequences, probabilities. They delayed action longer than most species found tolerable. But once consensus was reached, once a line was crossed, they did not negotiate further. Silence followed. Then action. A message circulated through restricted diplomatic channels, originating from a defunct human embassy that had been abandoned decades earlier. It contained only a single sentence, extracted from an old human doctrine and marked as verified. When Earth goes silent, all constraints are lifted. No signature was attached. None was needed. On the capital world of the Iridian League, the planetary defense minister ordered a full military alert, then quietly rescinded it. There was no configuration in which a defensive posture mattered anymore. You could not deter something that had already concluded the argument. Some governments attempted outreach anyway. Automated envoys launched toward the Sol system carrying apologies, trade concessions, declarations of innocence. None were answered. Their transmissions vanished into the same void that had swallowed Earth's voice. Others reacted with panic disguised as aggression. Fleets mobilized, hoping to strike first, to break the myth, to force humanity back into the noise of war where rules still applied. Their strategists were ignored by elders who remembered the old records. Humans did not escalate. They finalized. Everywhere, the same unspoken understanding took hold. Earth had not gone dark because it was weak. Earth had gone dark because it no longer needed to explain itself. The most chilling detail emerged hours later, buried in telemetry logs that few civilizations had the expertise to interpret. Human military infrastructure, long thought scattered, semi-autonomous, and largely symbolic, had synchronized. Not centralized. Synchronized. Independent fleets aligned their vectors. dormant platforms powered up without command pings. Deep space constructs that had never responded to external inquiry activated as if they had been waiting. No traffic flowed back to Earth. Whatever was happening did not require oversight. An old strategist from a species older than human civilization itself summarized it best, his voice shaking as the realization settled. "Earth hasn't gone dark because it's afraid of us," he said. "Earth has gone dark so nothing can stop what comes next. Not even itself." By the time the galaxy fully understood that silence was not a symptom but a signal, the opportunity to do anything about it had already passed. Earth was no longer speaking. And when humanity stopped talking, history showed that annihilation was already underway. The galaxy had always assumed the human's restraint was cultural, even moral. That belief collapsed the moment the archives were opened. Long before Earth joined any interstellar body, humanity had already accepted a grim statistical truth: no civilization survived indefinitely. Collapse, extinction, or assimilation were not possibilities but eventualities. While others invested in immortality myths or divine safeguards, humans built contingencies. Not for victory, but for failure. The Silence Protocol was one such contingency. It was not a weapon in itself. It was permission. Buried beneath layers of misdirection and diplomatic theater, the protocol existed as a single, irreversible decision tree. If activated, Earth would sever all outbound communication, revoke centralized command authority, and distribute operational autonomy to every human military asset, artificial intelligence, and long-range system, without override. No councils. No debates. No emergency ethics committees. Diplomacy, once suspended, could not be resumed. Alien analysts pieced it together from fragments: corrupted embassy servers, captured doctrine manuals, testimony from defectors who had never expected the protocol to be real. The conclusion was unanimous and horrifying. Earth's silence did not mean humanity was leaderless. It meant leadership was no longer required. Human fleets were designed to function without instruction for centuries. Their war AIs were not shackled by rigid obedience algorithms but trained on human history itself, on patterns of betrayal, escalation, and extermination. Ethical constraints existed, but they were conditional. Those conditions had now been revoked. The logic behind it was disturbingly compassionate. Humans believed that if a conflict reached a point where silence was necessary, then continued negotiation would only prolong suffering. Delay would mean more lives lost, more worlds burned slowly instead of quickly. The humane choice, in their view, was decisiveness. An alien philosopher reviewing the doctrine summarized it with visible discomfort. They consider annihilation a form of mercy, when all alternatives are exhausted. That philosophy explained why the protocol terrified the galaxy more than any superweapon. Weapons could be countered. Fleets could be fought. But a civilization that had already accepted its own moral responsibility for destruction could not be coerced or frightened. As analysts dug deeper, they discovered another unsettling detail. The Silence Protocol had never been meant solely for external threats. It was designed to activate even if the danger came from humanity itself. Internal collapse. Rogue factions. Ideological fracture. If humans determined that their own existence endangered the wider galaxy, Earth would still go dark. The protocol did not distinguish between enemy and origin, only outcome. That revelation sent a fresh wave of panic through the stars. This was not arrogance. It was self-awareness taken to an extreme no other species had dared. The question every government now asked was the same: what had triggered it? The answer emerged slowly, reluctantly, through intercepted data streams that human systems no longer bothered to encrypt. A coalition had formed in secret, dozens of species bound by fear rather than unity. Humanity's rapid adaptability, their unchecked population growth, their willingness to fight without ritual or pause, these traits had been deemed an existential risk. The coalition's plan had not been immediate war. It was worse. Gradual containment. Economic strangulation. Political isolation. Cultural erosion. Humanity would be reduced, controlled, and eventually erased without a single formal declaration. Earth had discovered the plan too late to dismantle it peacefully, and too early to ignore it. That was when the decision was made. The moment consensus formed among human leadership, communication ceased. Not because they feared interception, but because further discussion was meaningless. There would be no demands, no ultimatums, no attempts to explain. Explanations were for those who still had choices. Across the galaxy, systems began reporting anomalies that confirmed the worst assumptions. Human installations previously written off as defunct reactivated. Deep space factories increased output beyond projected limits. Autonomous strike groups altered patrol routes without requesting clearance. Still, Earth remained silent. Some alien leaders clung to the hope that this was posturing, a psychological maneuver meant to force concessions. Those hopes died when a human archive node broadcast one final, unaddressed transmission before going dark as well. "Silence is not absence," the message read. "It is focus." With that, the last human voice vanished. What replaced it was not chaos, but alignment. The galaxy began to understand that the silence protocol was never about secrecy. It was about removing friction. No debate meant no delay. No command meant no hesitation. Humanity had not prepared for war. It had prepared for the moment when war was no longer a question. The first human fleet appeared without announcement on the edge of the Caro's expanse. There was no hyperspace flare, no broadcast identifier, no challenge signal. One moment the space was empty, the next it was occupied by vessels whose configurations did not match any known registry. They did not advance. They did not threaten. They simply existed. Within minutes, similar reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human formations emerging near critical junctions, shipyards, data nexuses, and military hubs. Not everywhere, only where it mattered. It was not a show of force. It was positioning. Attempts at contact followed immediately. Emergency frequencies lit up with surrender offers, denials of involvement, pleas for clarification. The human ships acknowledged none of it. Their silence was uniform, absolute, and unmistakably intentional. Then the first system went quiet. The Varellan homeworld had been a mid-tier power, strategically placed and deeply involved in the containment coalition. Its defenses were layered, modern, and fully operational. They never fired. Human weapons did not announce themselves with light or sound. They rewrote physics locally, collapsing infrastructure, energy grids, and orbital platforms in a sequence so precise that civilian population centers lost atmosphere before alarms could finish sounding. It was over in less than 4 minutes. The galaxy froze, not in disbelief, but in confirmation. This was not retaliation. It was execution. Human fleets did not pursue fleeing ships. They did not bombard indiscriminately. Each strike followed a pattern that analysts quickly recognized with horror. Command centers first. Strategic industries second. Cultural archives last, erased not to punish, but to prevent reconstruction of the same ideas. Where resistance was minimal, destruction was complete. Where resistance was fierce, it was surgical. Human doctrine no longer rewarded bravery or submission. Only relevance. A pattern emerged that shattered any remaining hope of survival through innocence. Worlds that had merely supported the coalition economically were neutralized alongside its architects. Supply chains were severed. Financial hubs collapsed. Information networks burned. Humanity was not dismantling an alliance. It was removing the conditions that allowed one to exist. There were no speeches, no manifestos. But fragments of internal human logic surfaced through battle telemetry, and autonomous decision logs captured too late to matter. The rationale was cold, methodical, and devastatingly clear. Containment had been identified as an extinction vector. Any civilization participating in it, actively or passively, represented a future attempt. Probability demanded removal. Alien militaries finally coordinated a counteroffensive. Fleets massed, weapons primed, doctrines tested in simulations that ended the same way every time. Human units did not adapt to resistance, they anticipated it. Their formations shifted before enemy commanders issued orders. Their targeting algorithms predicted not just movement, but intent. It became apparent that humanity was no longer fighting in real time. This war had been planned, simulated, and resolved centuries ago. What the galaxy was witnessing was not strategy being developed, but strategy being executed. One by one, the coalition's core worlds fell. Not always violently. In some cases, human vessels simply disabled planetary infrastructures and departed, leaving worlds intact but incapable of sustaining advanced civilization. No power. No industry. No recovery. Mercy by human standards. Desperation drove a final attempt at unity. An emergency conclave broadcast on all frequencies, abandoning encryption entirely. Its message was incoherent, layered with apology, justification, and fear. It named humanity's contributions, praised its culture, begged for reconsideration. The response came not from Earth, but from a distributed human combat intelligence embedded across multiple fleets. It was brief and unaddressed. Outcome already selected. Further input unnecessary. After that, resistance ceased, not because hope remained, but because comprehension finally arrived. Humanity was not angry. It was not offended. It was not even vengeful. It was finished. Entire regions of space dimmed as trade routes collapsed and starports died. The galaxy's political maps ceased to exist in any meaningful form. Survivors watched from distant systems as human fleets withdrew with the same quiet precision with which they had arrived. And still, Earth remained dark. That detail unsettled those few who lived through it more than the destruction itself. Humanity had not returned home. It had not celebrated. It had not declared victory. The silence protocol remained in effect because the objective had not been conquest. It had been prevention. In the end, there was no final battle, no dramatic climax to mark the war's conclusion. Only the slow realization spreading among the remaining civilizations that the conflict had never been open-ended. From the moment Earth went dark, the result had been locked in. The galaxy had not been fighting humanity. It had been living on borrowed time, granted by a species that believed restraint was a choice, and annihilation, when chosen, was simply the most efficient way to ensure the lesson would never need to be taught again. When the last human fleet withdrew from contested space, the galaxy did not celebrate. There were no victory declarations, no rebuilding conferences, no triumphant alliances formed from the wreckage. What remained was quieter than war had ever been. Entire sectors lay dormant, not ruined but emptied of relevance. Worlds that once dominated trade and politics survived physically, yet functioned at a fraction of their former capacity. Their infrastructure had been spared just enough to keep populations alive, and just broken enough to ensure they would never rise again. Historians struggled to name what had happened. It did not fit the models of conquest or genocide. Humanity had not claimed territory. It had not imposed governance. It had not rewritten borders in its favor. It had simply removed threats, then vanished. And Earth was still dark. For months, then years, no human signal returned. No diplomatic probe reactivated. No cultural transmission resurfaced. The absence itself became doctrine. Survivors taught their descendants the meaning of that silence long before they taught mathematics or history. When humans stopped speaking, the saying went, "Listen to what they've already decided." New laws emerged across the remaining civilizations, unwritten but universally enforced. No species would ever again attempt containment of another. No coalition would form in secret. No fear-driven extinction planning would be tolerated. Humanity had not left instructions, but the consequences were instruction enough. Some believed Earth had been destroyed in the process. Others claimed the planet still existed, intact and untouched, its population dormant or withdrawn from galactic affairs by deliberate choice. Both theories circulated freely, because either changed the outcome. The more unsettling rumors suggested something else entirely, that Earth's darkness was not a temporary state, but a standing posture. A warning light permanently switched off. Long-range sensors continued to detect Sol's familiar gravitational signature. The planet remained where it had always been. Alive, in the strictest sense. But unreachable. As if humanity had chosen to exist only on its own terms from that moment forward. Among the elder species, those who had survived the previous age of silence, the lesson was finally articulated without embellishment. Humanity did not seek dominance. It sought certainty. When uncertainty became intolerable, it removed it completely. That understanding reshaped galactic psychology more thoroughly than any empire ever had. Expansion slowed. Militarization gave way to restraint. Aggression became an unspoken taboo, not because it was immoral, but because it was inefficient in a universe where one species had demonstrated the cost of miscalculation. Generations passed, and the Silence Protocol became legend, studied in academies, referenced in strategic simulations, whispered about in the same breath as extinction events and natural disasters. Yet it was never challenged. No one attempted to test whether humanity still watched. Testing was unnecessary. Every civilization understood the line now. Not a border, not a treaty, but a decision point. Push another species toward annihilation, and you might discover that humans considered the problem worth solving again. The final and most enduring impact of the darkness was not fear, but clarity. The galaxy learned that survival was not guaranteed by strength or numbers, but by restraint and transparency. Humanity had not enforced peace through occupation. It had enforced it through example. Whether Earth would ever speak again became irrelevant. The message had already been delivered, perfectly and irrevocably, without a single word spoken. The day Earth went dark, the galaxy learned that silence could be louder than any declaration of war, and that some civilizations did not need to rule the universe to define its limits. And so the stars endured, quieter than before, guided by a truth no one dared forget. When humanity chose silence, it was not retreat. It was mercy,